Coming to you from UBN Studios in Burbank, California. You're listening to the Unsugarcoated Podcast with your host, Aalia and AlAmri.
Hello, everybody out there in the podcast world. This is Aalia, and I am so happy to be with you here today. Today, we have a sponsored episode yet again coming out of El Paso. We are brought to you by the House of Kings Card Club. They are a social club bringing Texas Hold'em back to Texas. Their main purpose is to give El Paso a legal and safe poker room that strives to uphold the integrity of the game and provides the best customer service to its members. For more information on our wonderful sponsors, please go to houseofkingscardclubep.com. And I would, as a personal note, like to add, I know that they're facing some challenges right now in El Paso. Our prayers, our thoughts are with you. As we always say, El Paso strong. So just know that. Thank you for your effort and support of us. Well, on to the podcast. For those of you who know a little bit about me, you know that I happen to be a Muslim. I am very proud to be a Muslim. I'm not actually here to tell you I'm a perfect one or that I'm here to represent something in what a lot of people's minds tends to be the stereotype about it. But I do like to talk about it. In fact, so much, that I used to go on Facebook and I would see lots of people speaking super negatively. People I knew, people would say to me, "Oh, but Aalia, you're different." When I would put my hand up and say, "Hey, that meme that you put today about how all Muslims should die, I'm one." And can we have a conversation? And they would always say, "Well, it's not you. You're different from the rest of them." And I can't tell you how frustrating it became. But the cool thing about being a creative is I do get a chance to change the narrative, and I do get a chance to look for ways to help people broaden their minds and open, just being open. When you go to a movie, when you go read a book, you're opening yourself up, right? And so that's what I did. And in 2019, I released Jugend, Jugend, a fiction novel that has since won 3 international awards for its hard-hitting message on Islamophobia, white supremacy. It definitely is intended to be a humanitarian book and really draw the curtain back and bring you into 2 incredible timelines and just give some perspective. Because I really heard it all as a Muslim. I'm not going to lie. My children have been called terrorists in school. I have been told things without anyone really knowing me or my background. And I even had a family member that one time said to me, "I don't believe every Muslim is a terrorist, but I do believe that every terrorist is a Muslim." Okay, which was really honestly quite one of the most stupidest things I'd ever heard. And then on top of that, my ex-husband is also Middle Eastern, Palestinian, Lebanese. I have children, and there's a lot to it. So sometimes it's a hard conversation to have. And I'm really excited because today I get to be joined in this conversation by another creative who has a passion for creating perspectives and changing the narrative. And we're going to talk about how we both feel represented here and everywhere, because this is not an issue that actually we're going to say is only in America, by the way. We know this. Like, if I go to London, the conversation about Muslims is also a very difficult one to have. So this is not just a harp on America. We want to help broaden the world's ideas and knowledge a little bit from our perspective. And also for other Muslims out there. I'm sure they're going to have a fun time listening to us. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my amazing guest. Recently featured in Joud LA, Joud AlAmri is a female Saudi Arabian film director, screenwriter, producer, and first assistant director. Growing up in the Middle East and aware that of the increasing gap between cultures of the East and West, AlAmri started making films with the intention of shedding light on a region that may seem alien to the rest of the world. With a background in design and a number of photography exhibitions under her belt, AlAmri employs a unique aesthetic within her storytelling, and she is here to talk to us about it today. Everyone, please welcome Joud AlAmri. I feel like I should have a tabla. Let's get the tabla out. So first of all, full disclaimer for anyone who hears me talk with an accent. Yes, when I get around my people, first of all, my brain does like to think in Arabic. So I do, and I will. If you hear an accent, it is there. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not faking the funk. I am more than one thing. It just so happens. But Joud, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Please give our audience a little bit of your, your background, at least as to what's brought you into the world of filmmaking.
Okay. I think I've always really been interested in writing and storytelling in general. And filmmaking or directing really just felt like this one thing where I can have this, like, complete control, or so I thought back then. So I've always been interested in storytelling, and I've been writing for ever since I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew very early on that filmmaking was what I wanted to do. But it wasn't, I couldn't really just go for it at the time. I still had to, my parents and whatever. So I kind of like chose a sort of skewed way of getting to it pretty much. So what I did was I studied multimedia design, minored in film. And then from then on, that I did, in the UAE. And then right after that, I decided I'm going to do my MFA in filmmaking and directing, and I just kept going. So I started making films in college in AUS. That's the American University of Sharjah. And then since then, it's just been film.
And so I'm going to ask you about that experience, but funny true story. I almost grew up in Saudi. Okay. My mom, when I was about 7, she divorced my dad when very young, and then she was married another time and then another time. But in between one of those marriages, when I was 7, she met this one guy, and she was ready to marry him, and she was like, we're going to be moving to Riyadh. Mm-hmm. And I was like, from 7, I knew where Riyadh was, because I was like, I almost lived there. We were like packing up, getting ready to go. And then, I don't know, my mom changed her mind. So she was like, yeah. And I always wonder what my life would have been different. Let's talk a little bit, because I know when you say, oh, I wanted to be a filmmaker, I'm sure there's so many people who are going to be like, what? They're going to let you do that? Mm-hmm. So what do you say when someone says to you, wait, you could study film? You were allowed to leave your house and go to university? I'm totally going to hit on a lot of the stereotypes. I have to. Come on, man. This is like my one time to call it out.
Of course. And I think, especially back then, it was like, even multimedia design was like, what is that? It was anything really out of the traditional sort of career choice of doctor, engineer. This is something like I think all Arab communities have, is like, no, you got to be a doctor, you got to be an engineer, you got to be an architect or whatever. That's right. Sort of and filmmaking is just like unheard of, let alone for a female.
Right.
And like it wasn't, I realized how lucky I was because my father was so supportive in that sense, is that if you found what you're passionate about, go for it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That was his thing. It wasn't really about I'm gonna pick and choose for you or tell you not to do something or whatever. He recognized that and I know this now, that like knowing what you want isn't something that really comes by easy.
Right.
And I know a lot of people think they want something in the beginning, and then they realize, oh, like I've been wasting so much time on this. I actually have been wanting to do this all along.
Right.
So the fact that he kind of recognized that in itself, just knowing that this is actually what I want to pursue, he just kind of supported me through it. But it still wasn't easy, and it took him a while to get on board with it. And for everybody else, like everybody was just kind of waiting for me to like, okay, when are you going to give up on this, right?
Right.
Everyone was like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, okay, so are we done with this like little thing that you're trying to
Why do artists get that? Are you done with this? When she wins an Emmy, are you going to be like, are you done with this? Come on.
No, but it really was something that was completely unheard of.
Right.
Then.
Well, it's kind of like comedians too, like stand-up comedians in the Afghani community. I have a friend who's a female comedian, and when she called back home to tell her family she was going to become a comedian, they're like, "Oh, what?" Mm-hmm. Not that we didn't have comedy in the Middle East, because we do, because we had lots of it, but especially in Egyptian TV. But anyway, I think that it's always, like we were talking about, I think it always does depend on what family you land into. A lot of people don't understand that. Just similar to every other family in the world that has its ranging beliefs, like when you're born into that. So some are more liberal, no matter where you are in the world, or supportive or different or progressive in the good sense. And then some still stay rooted in like old school traditions. That is real. That does happen. We get it. Yes, there are some more extreme parts of the Middle East that, like neither you nor I probably want to like hang out there. So that's fair. We acknowledge that. We're not here to like defend every single part of Islam. We're just talking about it. But how has what you've seen, because one of the things that I found interesting about you is, you started making films with the intention of shedding light on a region that may seem alien to the rest of the world. So what was it specifically that made you say, you know what, I feel I need to get my stick in there too?
So maybe that's a little misleading, because I think I was just fascinated with film in the beginning. But I think it wasn't until I discovered what it means to write what you know, which is a piece of advice that every creative gets at some point, and every writer gets at some point, like write what you know and talk about what you know. In the beginning, I was just like any other, I'm a fan of movies and I wanted to make cool things and whatever I was looking at and whatever I was consuming, I kind of wanted to just reproduce it because I thought that's what you do.
Right.
But I was lucky enough to have this mentor back in college that really like steered me into that direction, like into really talking about my own experiences and my own observations and stories that are rooted in what I truly do know and can fully understand and empathize with. And then I just sort of realized that, I could do much more than just make cool films, right? I could actually say something. I could actually, there can be a message behind it. There can be something behind it. And since then I just, took a lot of pride in using my heritage and my background and infusing that into my stories.
Same. I know. I have to I was really honored, everyone, because she read my book and she liked it. And we were talking about how I was doing what I think a lot of us are right now. We're changing the narrative and we're letting people into our world and trying to, like, in our own way, jumping up and down metaphorically, like, see. Let's talk about belonging, because in 2013, you said
2013.
Tell a little bit about what it is and what it represents for you, going in the same vein of representation.
Right. So Belonging was definitely that film for me, even though it's up online. It's 2 minutes long. It's not
a short film.
Really, it's not like it's not like high production value or anything, but it was very it was so important for me at the time, and still, because it serves as that reminder, right? As it's not about your technical skills. It's not about how much money you can throw into a film. It's not about any of that. It's about what are you saying, and is it resonating with anybody else?
Sure.
Because that film was, I had to make it in a rush and whatever. It was part of a college project. But the reaction that I got from this film that I thought was I can do much better. But just the message, it was kind of like autobiographical, you could call it. Like I was just talking about myself and how I do have this sort of, like I'm in between this, my East and West. I'm in between being, and the funny thing is, like what we were talking about before, is that I am Saudi Arabian.
Right.
And both my parents are Saudi Arabian. And I'm not biracial or anything, but what I had been exposed to and the type of media that I was consuming throughout my childhood was all Western.
Right.
And it was all what I was aspiring to achieve. Those were the standards that you have to get to be the best, to whatever. That's what you're sort of conditioned to believe, because it's just all around you.
Right.
no one tells you that there's like a little sweet spot in the middle
Right.
of accepting both of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's what belonging was about. It was just me sort of, I'm confused.
Right.
Really. Like that was the underlying message, is that I'm confused because this is telling me something. And then, you know, my religion, my community, my heritage is telling me something else. And I'm just trying to find that in between.
Right. Which is, I feel, for so many of us, this is a conversation for a lot of our generation and younger Muslims. I have to say, I know that the older community may not, like, we're not trying to, I mean, and I'm not trying to speak for people that I don't speak for, but I do know I'm not alone. I do know I've been out and having drinks, and I know that there have been my other Muslim friends there. I know, you know, that people have this, in fact, even in the book, I remember having one of my teenage girls in the book curse, because people have this perception that if you're a Muslim girl, you don't curse, and you're like, you know, and let me tell you, I curse like a sailor, okay? But I'm not trying to celebrate that as if it's bad, because I know I've told you, people said, oh, well, if you're not going to be a good Muslim, then why are you going to say you're Muslim at all? Why are you going to give it a bad name? I'm like, because just because I'm not perfect doesn't mean I'm not giving it a bad name. Because, by the way, I go feed the homeless. I go take care of the orphans. I give my time to the poor. I do the things that are actually supposed to be the most important. And to those things, I think I'm representing God in a positive way. Yeah, you're right. On my daily day, maybe I'm not doing enough, but that's between me and God. And so I think that we're also at a level where a lot of us are starting to take our relationship more personal, which is in the past, it's been so connected to the family. Yeah. And this is another thing that I think is interesting in the narratives that I try to like make people just aware of, and part of the education. Because I find a lot of misperceptions, and I really want to talk about Ramy, which is the Hulu. We both agreed. You were like, you got to watch Ramy, and I did get to finish watching it before we had this episode, so that I could really talk on it. If you haven't seen it, sorry, but you should go see it, especially if you're Middle Eastern. I've never felt so represented by a show. But the part is that these misperceptions, like that, first of all, that Muslims are liberals. Like in general, like I think us, like the more modernized and when we talked about West, like people think West is only America, but from the Middle East, France,
West
Europe,
is just,
you weren't just emulating America, you were emulating a lot. But what a lot of people also don't know is that in the early 1900s in Lebanon, they had trolleys going down the streets in Beirut, and they had women walking with parasails, and they were not, like it was much more modern than people have this imagination. I remember one time somebody saying, so did you guys ride camels in Lebanon? And I'm like, no, we didn't ride the camel. Not in this century, at least. So, those misperceptions that go in.
I mean, even Saudi, I don't know much to really dive into it, but the perception is that Saudi, or at least the Saudi that I grew up in, was, abaya, and you're all covered up and whatever. But what my father tells me is that, no, back in the 70s, it wasn't like that. Yeah. And that's what's, like, so hard for me, at least, to, like, wrap my head around.
We can watch Joud Hosni and we know she was wearing short skirts. And look, if you just shut the volume off on a 1950s Arab movie, and I love black and white Egyptian cinema, for those, in the Middle East, Egypt was the cinema capital of the Middle East. And so a lot of films came out of there. And Joud Hosni, who was like just this amazing actress, she was like the Egyptian princess. Yeah. If you would have to turn the sound off, you'd think it was a movie in the Americas. Yeah. Like the people dressed like the Beatles and all that stuff. I mean, there's so many movies that are going through my head that I'm like, yeah, all I had to do was turn off the volume, and I think I was watching an American show, from the hairstyles, right? Like and anyways, and yet you'd still see the influence, obviously, of Arab culture in them, but there's parts of it for sure. So these misperceptions are something I'm always trying to shatter. You talk about creating a film that speaks to how you feel in between these cultures. When you watched Ramy, which very much hits, like, this thing was incredible. How did it inspire you as a filmmaker? What did it make you say to yourself?
Ramy was truly the first time that I see myself represented. And I think for me, it was the moment when I truly understood what representation is. Yeah. Because you think that you're seeing yourself represented, and you're like, oh, there's this Arab character in that show, and there's this guy and whatever. But the way that Ramy just normalizes it and just presents it as not a big deal. It's not something that we have to dissect and discuss and debate about. It just is what it is. And the fact that he approaches it in such a humorous way and such an honest way.
Honest. He got real honest.
It really was, for me, all it said was, this is exactly what I've been trying to do, and this is exactly the kind of content that I want to make. And this guy is telling me that this is very much possible.
I felt that exact same way after having written Yugen.
Yeah.
And I mean, so you've read Yugen, and you know, like, I try to, like, there's things even like kind of in the Rumi sense where like the dad goes back and prays with the mom, you know, like I'm throwing in little things there where I'm showing. But here's what I think is interesting. There were parts of it that Americans and there are other people might make fun of. But I think it's sad because you don't realize then, once again, you're missing the beauty of the Middle Eastern culture, the Muslim, because they happen to be Muslim and Middle Eastern. Like, you can be Muslim and not Middle Eastern, by the way, but like, this is what we know. This is what we're exposed to. This is what we're talking about. But so I talked about when I saw the moment when they go back home to Egypt and he flips open the suitcases and there's he's supposed to bring the crock pot, the 5. Like, when you go to Bradley Airport in LA and you see someone roll up with 5 suitcases, guaranteed they're going back to the Middle East, and 2 of them, maybe 3 of those suitcases just have stuff for other people.
Pretty much.
But that's such a selfless thing. Like, we're so used to American culture. You show up somewhere, you don't bring anything. There's a lot of people that don't even know when you go to someone's house for dinner, you're supposed to take something, some sweets, take a dessert. Don't show up and just be like, hi, I'm here.
Right.
I mean, unless you're really, really cool like that. But I mean, if it's just, you're taught these etiquettes. Yeah. You're taught to be thoughtful to the family. And like, you go back home and the day before, like, I was laughing because I remember every time my family would go back home, the day before their trip, we had to go to Costco, or a couple days before, go to Costco, load up on all the big size. And on the flip side, my father-in-law and my family would always bring us stuff. They'd get the call. We're coming over. What do you need? You need your seasonings. You need the things that because there are things in the Middle East that they don't have here because they don't allow a lot of preservatives and they don't allow crap in their food. So, hey, there's actually, Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. Okay, tell me when Ramy, what were some of the points? Because I have to ask, what were some of the moments in the 2 seasons that really, like, were you like, I'm so glad you said it. Even if it's not something that specifically you do, but something that you were like, oh man, I can't believe he put that in there. Like, he was bold and authentic.
I mean, so much of it. But I remember I think it was the first episode, because I was like, if we're starting this way, then this is great. But when he's like washing up before he prays, and when he's like that the devil goes in between your toes or something like that. It blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what they would tell me back in school. That's definitely a thing. That's something that I got screamed at as a kid. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was just like, or, joking about, you need to listen to this reciter rather than this sheikh this sheikh, or like SoundCloud sheikhs. You know what I mean? It's just the way that he approaches it in a humorous way, I think, is very much representative of how we approach it. Right. Because I also think something that Arabs don't really get a lot of credit for is that we're very, very funny. Yeah. We really are. And we find a lot, even though we're discriminated against, and a lot of people find our ways weird or abnormal or whatever. We get that, and we're not oblivious to it, and we can have a sense of humor about it.
Right. I think that I thought that was amazing. I thought the part where he would have sex with a girl who wasn't Muslim, but then when he went on a date with a Muslim girl, he was all like, "But wait, wait, And then her reaction I thought was hilarious, and I'm not going to try and spoil it. It's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but in saying that it's really good. But the other part I thought was really bold was when the mom got dressed up and started getting feelings for the guy who was giving her a bit of attention. Yeah. Now
and the fact that he actually gives the same time, like, okay, he's the main character and whatever, but the fact that you do get these intimate episodes, and you get to spend time with the dad, you get to spend time with the mom, you get to spend time with the girl, or like that episode, I think it was in season 2, where they're talking about the evil eye, and that that's
there's all evil eyes in my house. You come to my house, you're gonna see them in there, like, because I do definitely believe in that. This is true. Yeah, her wearing the hijab, and then like it's because she thinks her hair is falling out, and then the way the guy was in the car, like, you don't. Okay, so let's talk about assimilation and this perception that just because you can love your culture. I mean, growing up, there's 2 different types of families that immigrate to America. It's usually immigrate to anywhere, but I'm just gonna definitely speak to America once again. It's what I know. There is this. And I guess my brain just sidetracked, because there are a lot of people who leave the Middle East not out of because they want to, but because they have to. There are a lot of people who do not want to be in the middle of these things that happen. But like when you go into places like the UAE, which is beautiful, and you don't have some of those conflicts, and you don't have like a homelessness crisis, and you have at least a system more in check for the people, it's actually a really beautiful thing. And coming over here is not necessarily a choice. It's more of like an opportunity, because they're coming over here to create more jobs, to create more businesses. It is a fact, statistical, that most Middle Eastern families come here and either own companies or entrepreneurs and help support our communities. That is a fact. And I'm not saying that other communities don't. Actually, they usually serve as well. But I mean, it just so happens, like you said, we have this echelon of thinking within the Middle Eastern world that is not bad, that true white America would not see as negative if they actually sat down to get a hold of it, because it's actually very much the same. Like you said, I mean, a white family, and I'm not speaking that in like I remember everybody, I'm half white. I grew up, that's the reason why I didn't actually get to embrace my Middle Eastern culture and the more international side of me until I got older, because I was raised with a family that was very like American, white. My grandfather, blonde hair, blue eyes, Heiss, German. That side fought on the Confederate side of the Civil War, right? Like Virginia owned plantations and slaves. And we're very proud of it. And proud Republicans and America. And my grandfather, we used to drive down the street, and if he saw, I mean, he wasn't against people speaking a different language, but if he saw you hanging out, he would yell at you, get a job. He was one of those people. So I know for a fact that my grandfather wanted all his grandkids to grow up and become doctors and lawyers. And I know that in a Middle Eastern family, with jiddu mateta, it's the same thing, and you in fact, a lot of times you don't even go to school because you just want to go to school, get the degree so mom and dad can put it on the wall, right? So they can tell their friends, my son has a degree, right? Anyway, going back to kind of like what I think is important is that people do take the time, though, to consume this content and open up their eyes and imagination to the possibility that we're so much more alike than we actually think we are. I mean, sometimes that's where I get stuck in that conundrum, because I realize we're different, but then also I'm like, but we're still the same.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, and touching on what you were saying earlier, is why are we looked to represent our entire religion?
Right.
Because, I mean, I don't see anybody representing any creative representing the entirety of Christianity. I don't see anybody. Why is it that Muslims are like, again, like, don't say you're a Muslim if you're not, a good Muslim. What is a good Muslim? And who's deciding what's a good Muslim, you know? So I also think that we really shouldn't be carrying that weight of representing, because, I mean, Muslims are, like you said, you don't have to be Middle Eastern to be Muslim.
Right. We're all different.
Very different. It's all over the world. It's much more spread than people really want to admit or recognize. It's in every little corner of the world.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really add up for me when we're looking at one specific person just because they're in the spotlight or whatever to represent an entire religion that is so complex.
It's true. And within every family, I don't know how it is in yours, but like even within mine, and I can say this, like my kids have been raised as Muslim kids in America, and they've been called terrorists, and they've been like done the whole deal. They get side eyes whenever a teacher is incorrectly teaching Islamic studies, of course, and my kids have to just sit there and be like, that's actually not true, but I'm just going to be quiet. But like going to that, sorry, no, I just got like lost in what I was saying. She asked if we edited earlier. I was like, no, we just let it go. And when we mess up, we just mess up. But I think in media, that's why it's great that we're able to, because I feel like in media most of the time, okay, when Middle Eastern has been represented, it's usually for the attractiveness of a woman or for the terrorist looking.
Exotic. Or
exotic, exactly. Which I was told that growing up. I'm like, I had never understood what that meant. And now I'm like, okay, now I get it. But like, I think that they're cast as terrorists. So as a filmmaker, I'm going back to your filmmaking. And I like that you brought up that, yeah, they did a really good job of, even with speaking of film, of giving you more than just Ramy. They let you into these individual. Euphoria, another episodic series, also did that. And just speaking to technique, they did the same thing. And I think as a viewer and as an audience, it really opens you up.
Right.
How do you see yourself continuing your journey with regards to, like, you know, opening people's eyes and giving them a perspective and understanding that, like you said, like, oh, that's what I was going to say. If you have two people in one family that are different, how can you look at an entire religion of people or continent of people or a city of people and think that they all have the exact same ideas and understandings and perceptions? They don't. But yet people tend to just lump a lot of Muslims all into one category. Yeah. I know you said it really made you feel good that when you saw Ramy doing it, you knew you could do it and that we could do it. Like, even with my book, I'm like, okay, you know, we have had ideas of adapting it into a film. I kind of wrote it. I don't know if you can tell, like, I move it along. I know I didn't like go super, super deep into like, you know, because I move it along. But I think that it is important for us as creatives in this space to continue showing up, because you're right. Every piece of media has a message in it. It's just not always a good message, or maybe it's not fully understood. But I know, like you, when it comes to unsugarcoated media and what we're doing here and what we're doing with projects outside of the podcast, it's like, yeah, I want that to be a socially conscious media, you know, content.
Right.
Where do you see your journey going, and how do you?
I think the best that I could do, or the best that any creative could do, is really just to speak honestly, to root it in honesty and present it as genuinely as you can. Because I think when you take on this role of like, I'm going to represent my entire community, that's a lot of pressure.
Right.
That's a lot of pressure, and that's going to hinder you in so many ways, I think. But I think when you approach it as, this is a story just like any other story, because it is. It is. At the end of the day, it's just, we're talking human stories, what they go through. Yes, their background is different. Yes, their religion is different. Yes, all of that is different. But at the core of it, it's a story.
Right.
So I think when you approach it that way, you're less likely to take on that, oh my God, I'm representing all Muslims, all Arabs, all whatever. And it's like, but you really don't, you can't.
Right. Do you think Ramy got some flack?
I'm sure he did.
No, for real. Sorry. I mean, come on.
I'm sure he did.
Even with my book, I will say, and I'm not trying to like throw shade, because, you know, it is within my community and the people I know. But yeah, I'm not going to lie and say that I've got a ton of support from the Muslim community, because I'm kind of saying maybe some of those things that, you know, like if you went to an extremely evangelical city, yeah, they'd be the same way. Like, you don't talk about the things we do, you know, you just you don't tell people these things, you know. It's the facade. We're all so interested in
airing your laundry.
Yeah. And or making us look bad, because reputation is everything, right? And even for me, even like as a mom, one day I remember, I will say this was a good thing. My husband told me, I remember with my daughter, my oldest, I was like, you know, I'm trying to do so good. And then I felt bad because she was doing things that I'm like, well, where did she get that from? I didn't tell her. She was raised different. He's like, you can't take responsibility for every influence she has. She goes to school. She has other people. Yeah. You're only one point of her influence. And when he said that, I was like, wow, it's such a different concept, because in the Middle Eastern culture, or even in old school culture, because even the family that I was raised with here, they had that very old school mentality. Yeah. Family is everything, you know, and you don't betray the family. Loyalty. It was like mafia. Same thing. Like, almost like these mafia, you know. My grandfather was the godfather. You did not cross him. But, you know, like, genuinely, I think that the goal is for me personally to, just open people's minds up. And like you said, not feel like I have to represent everything. I think Ramy probably took some heat. I'm assuming there were people who didn't like it. Do you think you would be as bold to come out with some daring stuff? I mean, I loved your piece, Belonging. And yes, it's up when people go and look you up. And I thought it was even powerful, just that. But do you see yourself doing some pretty, I mean, how do you feel?
Yeah, I feel like once you keep your loyalty to the story, that shouldn't matter. Because I think the old school thinking is more like, let's, we don't speak about it. It didn't happen. Right. But what we're figuring out, the younger generation is figuring out, is the more we talk about it, the more comfortable we are with it.
Right.
The more I feel like I'm part of something. I feel like I'm connected to you in some way. So I think when maybe I'm exposing you or whatever, however way you want to see it, but I'm seeing it differently. I'm seeing it as, no, the conversation should be had.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
it has to start somewhere.
That's what I was saying earlier with my kids. Sorry, now I derailed a bit, but like that's the thing. We will sit at the table. And I've raised them with an Islamic foundation to be good people, to treat people well, consider God and pray and all of these things. And they will sit down and, my daughter has a very liberal, very, she's much more feminist, and then she kind of reminds me of Ramy's sister. Like that's my daughter in a 13-year-old body, okay, right? Yeah. And then my son is definitely more, we see that still. It's funny though, because you still see like the male, kind of like macho. Well, I get to do this because I'm a boy, and and like, that's still there. But we have these conversations. Yeah. We talk about homosexuality and Islam, and I have those conversations with my kids, and I think that's like you said, the younger generations. What else do you think is something that we as, and I know I'm 45, so I'm not necessarily the youngsters, but I am still in the younger echelon of our generation, especially because so much more, first generation and all that in America. Yeah. Like there's a lot of us that get that. What would you like? So for two things, for the Islamic community, as you see someone like Ramy putting something like this out and you see yourself as a filmmaker, what is your hope for not just the Islamic, honestly, even just the Middle Eastern culture? Like, how would you hope for them to feel about your work, embrace it? And
my hope is for them, like I said, to see it as, I want us to talk about it so much, and I want us to open it up for discussion, to the point where it really, like, I'm thinking of how I felt when I saw Ramy.
Right.
And I really couldn't believe that it took this long for me to feel that. Yeah. For me to really finally say, oh, I'm finally being represented. Yeah. And I had already, I was already making films, I was already writing and doing all of that, and I had still never found that. Right. So if it's a big deal for me, imagine what it can do to, a 13-year-old girl now that just is wanting to. And I think it's, again, when we talk about all these things that we just want to sweep under the rug, and we don't want to talk about, any kind of societal issues. Let's just not talk about it. It's perfect the way that we are. Just close it up and that's it. But a lot of people get lost in that, thinking that that really is the reality, and we all know that's not the reality. Right. The reality is we do have issues that we need to discuss, and we do need to, especially make it feel and know that they are supported, that they're not alone, whatever it may be, that there are some people that are going through exactly what you're going through, and they're thinking the same way that you're thinking. Right. And not have that be,
Yeah. And it's still hard. I don't know how you feel about being here. Like, actually, when Beirut took place, the explosion that took place not too long ago, I had a lot of people who would reach out to me, and this is just probably something that when we talk about feeling more than one place and feeling so much more attached, I remember a lot of people were reaching out to me and saying, how's your family? Like, so I checked in with, and thankfully, none of my family were injured or harmed, and, checked in with everyone. But even then, when people would say, is everyone okay? And then I would say, well, my family's okay. But it was like, there was this part of me, I'm like, okay, but even when I say that, just everybody there is my family.
Right.
Even if I don't know them.
Yeah.
That's my family.
Yeah.
And they're hurting, right? And like my best friend, actually, that's why I said that my best friend and Unsugarcoated Media's publicist, she's from El Paso. And actually, you know, once again, I do need to thank our sponsors, House of Kings Card Club in El Paso, Texas. Please text Kings to 915-603-3000 to register and receive promos and event notifications. We love you. We appreciate you. But, you know, like what's happening in El Paso, she feels that. When she talks to me about it, I get it because I know. And now that we're, you know, within the United States, it's been said to me, this is something I have to say, it's been said to me, well, it's easier for you to have a very much la la land, a forgiving perspective because you haven't been back home in the middle of the wars and, you know, where uncles and I've heard stories of uncles that were kidnapped in the middle of the night or cousins that I had that used to have to walk to school in line with zigzag for avoiding the snipers, you know, and even actually my ex-husband in 2006, which was caught at the Beirut airport when it was getting bombed, when he was getting ready to come home, like all these things, I wasn't like, they say that I've had enough time to heal because I haven't been so close to the war. I mean,
I don't know how that doesn't, for me, that doesn't make any sense because for me, it's like, because I'm not there, I would say being in LA made me cling to to what I do have back home much more.
Right.
I think being away from it and like you said, it's all your family. You do feel deeply connected because again, I think as diverse as the Arab community is, and it's like we have so many dialects, so many countries, but there's still a sort of camaraderie and union in it. Absolutely. That you just
habibi every time. Like, you know, as a young female, I used to love going somewhere and if the guy behind the counter was Arab, it was like most of the time 90%, it's like anything I needed, you know. It's like there's this sense of camaraderie and I jokingly, my husband, when we walk through an airport, I hear your people, I'm like, I know you hear my people. It's like my ears perk up because, and I, you know, I mean, everyone is my people, okay, but like really there is that sense of camaraderie and that sense of love that, you know, in being able to present it, like even with my last book and being able to just tell people, like you said, everyone has an Aunt Suzanne and how we'll like, you know, how we do tend to, we actually also give the shirts off of our back. There's this saying in America that I grew up with, you know, I'm the type of person I'll give the shirt off of my back for you. And I'm sorry, but the same thing can be said about the Middle Eastern
100%.
Islamic community as well. By the way, the Christians too, like, you know, it is just interesting how how the cultural experiences are a bit different. And you know, when you're here, and I'm like, when somebody meets you, if they can't tell your name is Arab or Islamic or Christian, like if your name is Omar, they're really, wait, Omar, what's your last name? Is it Haddad or Ali? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which one is it? You know? Another joke. But I mean, well, you know, but speaking to like, even in America, like I've always been asked, where are you from? I'm from California. They're like, no, where are you really from? And I can't lie. If you're told that all your life, you kind of start to realize like maybe, you know, and that is part of what's made me feel so transcendent beyond just one place in California. Like I've said it in one of my intros before, if I took a DNA test, I don't know what I'd be. I'd probably be a whole bunch of stuff really when we look at our history. But I do know I'm 100% human being. And that's the one I love the most. Yeah. You know?
Exactly.
And so going back, when it comes to American culture, and I am speaking to America because you're here now, you know, and you're making life here and you're doing all these incredible things. And, you know, we want to support you. We want to honor that. What is your hope for the American and the non-Muslim community or non-Middle Eastern community? How do you hope for them to embrace? What do you hope for them to see in your art?
To see that there's a lot of things that you've been missing out on.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
There's a whole world that you've been missing out on.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean,
that's beautiful.
Parasite.
Yes.
Parasite showed you that, you know, there's so many more stories out there.
Yeah.
It's just forget the language barrier. We're over that now,
Right.
you know, like we can share stories now, and we can show so many parts of us that I think are just still untouched and still need to be looked at.
Yeah. Over the Moon just came out on Netflix. And yeah,
Okay.
we're talking film because we're film people. Okay. Outside of this, y'all know I'm married to an executive producer. and I thought it was really cool because I can't lie. When I was watching it, I thought for every little Asian girl right now. And Philippa Soh did the voice of Shanley, the goddess in it, who Philippa Soh was the voice of Eliza in Hamilton.
Okay.
The Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows I love Hamilton. She was Eliza Hamilton. So I love the way that they put like a modern spin on it, Asian tale. And my husband does a lot of work, and even my mentor, Larry Namer, who does a lot of work in Asian media as well. It's because they want to promote diversity and acceptance and give these tales that, you know, like, for example, I never knew what Dia de los Muertos was. It really, truly understood it. I thought it was part of Halloween up until a few years ago. And then I got the education on it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. Of course I celebrate this. And I'm not Mexican in that sense. So I'm not like, you know, I mean, I'm Californian. So I feel like I speak Spanish. It did used to be Mexico, guys. But the truth is, I thought it was amazing that they did do something that represented, you know, Asian culture, and we should. We need to see more of it. You, as a creative, what would you like to see more of? I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but what would you like to see more in the space right now as far as film?
I mean, I'm repeating myself, but really just honest representation.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think we have to keep saying it. We do have to, until people understand that. Can you stop casting us as like terrorists and freaking...
Honest representation.
Yeah.
Just, you know, tell it genuinely, tell it honestly, and, you know, the rest will follow. That's how I see it. Just treat it like any other story. Don't treat it as a political issue. Don't treat it as something we need to fix in society. It is what it is, and let's just talk about it just like we talk about any other story. Right. Because at the end of the day, like you said, it's all human stories. Right.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think we're going to have to get Yugen adapted, and then we're going to have to talk to you about maybe directing that one.
Hell yeah.
Because, you know, what's funny is, and it is funny, right, what you know, because I had worked with another screenwriter, and I loved her, but in the end, she was like, oh, I'm kind of busy with another project. And I thought this must be kind of the universe working, simply because, yeah, it's hard for someone to really understand what I'm writing, like, unless you know what I'm talking about. And I think as a director, that's important, right? And as a filmmaker, if you're taking someone's idea and someone's vision, even though it obviously changes from a book, very much so when it goes to film. But I think that ultimately, having the opportunities to take these and show the world, and I make them laugh, make them smile, make them cry. Okay, did you cry at the end of my book? It's okay if you didn't.
I didn't cry. Okay. I was just, I mean, I'm not going to ruin it, but yeah, I didn't see it coming.
You did, yeah, that's what a lot of people say. Yeah, they didn't see it coming. But I'm sure you can also understand, and yes, we're being intentionally vague, so you have to go by it. You understood why I did it. Yeah. Like yeah. So thank you for, you know, just continuing to be a person who represents who you are. I think as females, you know, I definitely think it's incredible that you can step out and show the world what a beautiful, strong, courageous Middle Eastern Muslim woman can do. I wish you all the luck in the world and continuing that journey. For people who want to support you and go look at your, you know, what you're doing or stay in touch with you, can you tell our listening audience where they can find you?
Sure. Well, my website is JALAMRI. People just read it as JALAmri, but yeah, .com. And my Instagram handle is the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is in store? What are you working on right now? What's I mean, I know COVID has definitely changed some of the landscape, but you know, are you at least writing?
I am writing.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Is there anything that?
I mean, yeah, it's I'm writing several, but mainly my focus is just this one script that I've been working on for a couple of years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
A couple of years now. And it's, it's very personal and dear to me. So,
all right. Well,
yeah.
when you get it done, we'll have to go hit up Ramy. We're his piece. Just kidding. Anyway, well, thank you so much for your time, your effort, your beauty, and your courage, and your story. I look forward to seeing you again. Okay.
Thank you so much.
And for everyone at home, thank you so much for being with us. And I hope you got a little bit more about me and even just kind of enjoyed it. I think it's important. And if you want to stay in contact with me, please also check out our website, www.unsugarcoatedmedia.com. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, rate, connect with me on Instagram, please. And until next time, have a great day. Take care. And thanks for letting us be unsugarcoated. Bye.
It's so strange, I'm not holding my tongue. Radio making me feel so numb. Stolen beats, they're on repeat. But come on, don't we all want to be someone? Yeah, it's killing me, but I just want to be a millionaire.
What are you still doing here? Come back next week. Bye.